Okay, so everybody, welcome to the Digital Talk Show with Arwa. We have an amazing guest who is Athina, and she has a Finding Flo podcast which covers women's health and hormones. She is also passionate about helping women to balance their hormones and manage their menstrual cycle. She is also a copywriter on Upwork, which we are going to be talking about in today's podcast. And so, Athina, tell us a little more about your story.
Yeah, of course. So thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to be here. And my story really begins with so my copywriting story. I kind of just fell into copywriting. It wasn't really something that I'd set out to do really because my background is in science. So I studied biochemistry at university. So writing wasn't sort of on my radar, but I joined a podcasting Facebook group a couple of years ago, and there was a woman who put a post out saying, I'm looking for someone to just help me write a couple of podcast related articles for my website. And I thought, well, I know a bit about podcasting. I'm all right at writing. So I applied to that and I got that job. And from there, I kind of just thought, oh, I kind of enjoy this. So I started looking for other copywriting jobs, and then I joined Upwork, and it's kind of just gone from there, really.
That's amazing. So, talking about copywriting, from where did you learn copywriting?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've always been pretty good at writing, even though I studied science subjects. I've still always enjoyed writing, and as a child I would write sort of creative stories in my spare time. Just it's always been something I feel like I've
Hmm.
been quite good at. And in terms of copywriting specifically, it's kind of been one of those things where I've just learned on the job.
Hmm.
So, just from getting feedback from clients and getting different briefs for articles and that kind of thing, you just pick up these sort of skills here and there. And I guess over time, you learn more and more about the skill, I guess.
That's awesome. So, talking about copywriting, are there any courses that you took, or it was all completely like with experience you learned it over time?
Yeah, it's literally all been experience, really. It's just been a case of, you know, getting different jobs here and there, gaining the feedback from different people and using that feedback to then, you know, improve on your skills. And it's all been on the job learning for me.
So, usually people say that niching down is very important when you're starting with freelancing. So, is that something you also believe in?
I think I do to a point. I do to a point, but at the same time, I've I've always been quite flexible and quite open, and I've written about so many different subjects. And yeah, I don't know, I think it's good to niche down, I guess, and offer a specific set of skills to your clients, but at the same time you don't want to limit yourself too much, especially when you're just getting started with freelancing. It can be difficult to get jobs because you're new and you don't
Hmm.
have necessarily like a portfolio to show to clients. So sometimes you do have to widen your sort of prospects a little bit at the start, and then maybe further down the line you want, if you want to become like an expert in a specific subject, then you might be able to then.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, you talked about Upwork as well, right? So, now on Upwork, do you feel that the earning potential is higher than finding clients on social media platforms like Instagram or Facebook?
Oh, that's a good question. I think potentially it's really difficult because Upwork has such a wide range of jobs, and
Hmm.
some of these jobs, so for example, for me, like I have sort of like a set rate that I have on my profile per hour. Some of the jobs that I get invited to on Upwork, they're offering much less, and
Hmm.
others it's about the same price. So there's such a big range of job offers on there that for some jobs you might not earn very much, for others you might earn more than you would on social media. So it's sort of like a case by case basis. I think there's definitely good earning potential on Upwork, and it's something that I think every freelancer should consider. But at the same time, if you have a really loyal social media following and you find it relatively easy to get sales and leads and clients on your social media, then stick with what's working for you.
Right, absolutely. And talking about, do you like freelancing in general, or do you do something else as well?
Yeah, so I am a full-time freelancer. When I first started, I had a part-time job in the NHS. But over time, I managed to get more freelance work, and then I could move into that full-time. So alongside my copywriting, I also have a podcast, which I earn a little bit of money from. So it's kind of part and parcel of my freelancing. But yeah, that's it. That's me full-time now.
Okay, so for someone who wants to start from scratch from Upwork, what do you suggest to them?
Well, I mean, just put yourself out there, really. Just make your profile, put in as much information as you can about your qualifications, your previous experience, and write sort of a cover letter kind of thing that you can send over to clients when you apply for jobs. It really is just about getting started, just applying to a few jobs. You might be rejected from some, but you'll get others, and you can just work from there.
Yeah, the main thing is that people fear the fear of rejection is there a lot in the new freelancer. So that is something that people need to overcome. But I think it gets you get used to it once you start applying for more and more jobs, and you get a few ones and you don't get a few ones. So I think it's a part of the process.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're all going to get rejected from things at some point in our lives, and you do just get used to it, and then you'll have some rejections, but you'll have a lot of accepted applications where you do get the job. So just put yourself out there.
Yeah, true. So apart from Upwork, do you use like Facebook groups to get clients?
No, I don't actually. No, the only Facebook groups I'm in are podcasting groups, and that's sort of just to advertise my podcast. But in terms of my writing, I don't really use social media for that.
Okay, that's awesome. I also just checked out your Instagram account. It had 105,000 followers. So how long did it take to reach to that level?
I've had that account for like probably about maybe 5 or 6 years, but I used to have more than that. I used to have more followers than that, but I don't really post on that account that much, to be honest. It's kind of one of those where I'll just post if I've got like a nice picture of me and my friends or something, or me and my cat. But then I use my podcast Instagram account a lot more. And although that has less followers, I enjoy posting on my podcast account a lot more than my personal account. So yeah, so I don't really post on that one that much anymore, to be honest.
Okay, awesome. So you talked about the Finding Flow podcast, which I found very interesting. So can you talk a bit more about that as well?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my podcast is called Finding Flo, and it's focused around mainly women's health and hormones, the menstrual cycle, just all of the kind of things that we're not taught about in schools, and we should be,
Yeah,
all of the
true.
important things about period health and, those kind of things. It's something I'm really, really passionate about. And that's sort of why I have my podcast, because I think that there's so much information that is really important to our health as women that we just aren't taught, and no one speaks about. So yeah, I really try and use my platform to just spread awareness about how important hormonal health is, and yeah, things like that.
Actually, that's true that we need more awareness about that in today's world and generation, wherever people are going.
Yeah, we definitely do. It drives me insane. It frustrates me so much that we're not taught about this, but
Yeah,
yeah.
true. So, in terms of income, how stable it is in freelancing?
I mean, I think freelancing is, notoriously unstable, but at the same time, that's it's kind of as stable as you want it to be. So I think for me, it's always been relatively stable, but I think that's because I don't I sort of try to apply to a range of jobs, and I try and get sort of clients that are going to be with me long term instead of just going for the one-off jobs. So I actually now, a year and a half into it, I now have 3 long-term clients and they make up the bulk of my work. And then I'll
Okay,
have the odd sort of one-off job here and there thrown in, but predominantly those long-term clients, I know I've got sort of guaranteed work from them.
that's awesome. And do you feel like there are any disadvantages in freelancing?
Sorry, what was that?
Do you feel that there are any disadvantages in freelancing?
I think the disadvantage would be that you obviously have to sort of find your own work, and you have to, one of the biggest disadvantages, and something I've kind of struggled with a bit, is because you have to manage your own schedule, you have to set boundaries for, like, this is when I'm going to start work, this is when I'm going to stop working. But when you're a freelancer, it's very easy to just work all the time
Time.
because
Yeah,
you can.
true.
And that's something I really struggle with, is, stopping working in the evening. Like, I'll find myself sometimes working until I'm going to bed, and it's probably not that good for me, but it's one of them things that I'm working on. And I think that's definitely a disadvantage. If you're like me and you sort of don't know when to stop working, it's really difficult to, like, shut your laptop down.
Exactly. Even sometimes, like I have international clients, so I tend to work more towards the night than towards in the morning. So it's very difficult to, shut down the laptop completely. And sometimes
Yeah,
you're
it's so
working in
difficult.
between of work as well. You're watching TV alongside. It's really struggling sometimes.
Yeah, it's really tempting to just do work all the time. It really is.
Okay, so talking about that, how do you plan your day?
So I've kind of got into the habit of writing out like a to-do list in the morning, and I'll try and put on it like 3 major tasks that I think are going to take me a while, and then maybe like a few smaller ones that I can do quickly, but I'll try and limit myself to 3, because if not, I'll get overwhelmed. So that's kind of how I don't necessarily plan, the order in which I'm going to do the tasks. I'll just write down those 3. And as long as I get those 3 done, then I feel accomplished.
Okay, awesome. So do you use any tools for that?
For copywriting,
Yeah, for copywriting
yeah,
as well as planning your tasks.
um, I don't really. I used to use Google Calendar.
Hmm.
Um, I use Trello for my podcast to sort of plan my podcast, and I used to use Google Calendar to plan out my days. But I found that, just writing out a quick to-do list in the morning was easier for me. So there's not really any like major tools that I actually use now. But I think, over time I've just sort of developed my own way of doing things. So yeah, so I don't really use that many.
So when you're talking about copywriting, I know this one tool, Grammarly, which is really famous. So do you use those tools, those kinds of tools?
Yeah, for copywriting, I use Grammarly, and most of my, articles I write on just Microsoft Word. But I use Grammarly. I think that's really a really, really good tool for any copywriter. It just sort of spell checks your work. So, you can
Okay.
obviously read over it and proofread your own work, but you might miss little things here and there. And
Yeah.
Grammarly is really good to capture those so you don't have like errors in your work.
Okay, that's awesome. So we have come to the end of the podcast. So the last question would be, what is the one piece of advice that you want to give to a newbie freelancer?
I think the advice I would give is just put yourself out there. Just apply to jobs. You might think you have no chance of getting a job, so you don't apply. But in reality, you could apply, get the job, and that could, start your whole career off. You could get other clients from that job. You can get experience. You can gain new skills. So just don't be afraid of that rejection, like we were speaking about before. Just put yourself out there.
That's awesome. It was so good to have you, Athina, and I wish you all the best for your future and your freelancing career. So,
Oh, thank you so much.
can you tell our audience where can they find you online?
Yeah, sure. So my podcast is Finding Flo. That's spelled FLO. So there's no W on the word flow. And my podcast is on like every podcast platform there is, really: Spotify, Apple, Google, Anchor. My Instagram for the podcast is Finding Flo Podcast. Again, it's just spelled FLO, not FLOW. And I post my podcast on YouTube as well. And that's sort of the main places you can find me online. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me and ask me any questions, then they can do so on Instagram. I'm more than happy to help.